Matthew Holt. I'm up early West Coast. I'm talking with my friend Amanda Goltz. Amanda is these days, I'll get this wrong, the Director of Digital at BTG, which is did I get that right?
As usual, you gave me a huge demotion. I'm the Vice President of Digital Innovation.
Vice President of Digital Innovation at BTG, which is a pretty small British pharmaceutical company, which means that in terms of the health tech and digital world, it's such a huge company. So, and you've been there a couple of years now, Amanda, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So let's talk very briefly. You've got some news this morning, which we're going to chat about. But very briefly, why is a relatively small British pharma company hiring a digital health expert like you who lives in San Francisco? And what have you been doing there?
Sure. So thank you for joining me so early in the morning, your time. I actually get to be on the East Coast and wake up at a decent hour. But happy to talk about BTG and our big news, which you're going to help me share with the world. So, I resent the short joke. BTG is not that tiny. It is firmly mid-cap, global pharmaceutical and medical device firm headquartered in London, publicly traded on the LSE, U.S. headquarters in Philly. Yours truly, as well as a senior manager in digital health by the name of Delphia McKinney, represent digital innovation at BTG, and we are based in San Francisco, California, where all the good digital innovation is, right?
So they tell me.
Yeah, exactly. So what I have tried to build at BTG since joining a little bit under 2 years ago is a digital health competence and capability within the organization, and that means several things. One is even understanding what this whole world is. BTG's products are largely in interventional oncology and interventional medicine. They, when I joined at least, functioned fairly traditionally as a medical device supplier and specialty pharmaceutical supplier. And so I came barreling into the organization with a ton of information about technology-enabled services and doctors emailing patients and tracking patient outcomes using passive sensing and all of this sort of magical stuff, and they wanted to understand all about it and how it might impact their relationships with their customers and how it might affect their products. So we stood up a round of 4 pilots initially, based around the products already deployed in the marketplace. Your average run-of-the-mill technology-enabled services. What happens to the patient after we intervene on them? How do we track what happens? How do we help the physician select one product versus another? How do we help prepare the patient and the provider for the intervention and make sure that it's maximally efficient with no time wasted? Based on that, we did a second round of those pilots. We actually set up a couple interesting ways to help train the organization internally to think more like an agile startup and a little bit less like a traditional supplier. And so we do things like our Innovators Challenge, where we actually ask the entire global organization to submit digital ideas that they'd like to see built. And that helped us source our second generation round digital pilots. We're very, very firm about 2 rules in how we do digital at BTG. Number 1, we try not to invent it ourselves. We try not to fall into the trap of drug-branded apps. And this is what I spoke about a little bit at your wonderful conference, Health 2.0, last year from the main stage, about our advantages at BTG being relatively more agile and moderately sized. We're able to do things a little differently, and we don't feel like we have to invent it all here. So we work with the best and brightest in the digital health ecosystem. We've worked with Tonic Health, for example. Health Loop is another one of our great partners. We don't try to invent something if somebody else knows better how to engage with patients, how to make something sticky, and how to track actually the right data. So we're very proud of our collaborative partnerships. And number 2, we try to avoid pilotitis, which I'm sure will come as music to the ears of many of our entrepreneur friends. We have a pilot that lives in digital. It's entirely supported by our team financially and operationally for 1 year. After that 1 year, for better or for worse, the commercial business takes a look at it and they say, this has been a great success. We want to support it. We're adopting it into the business as an everyday operational tactic to support. Or they say, no, go back, try again. But we don't have our digital innovation become a skunk works on the side, constantly running years and years worth of pilots. We actually try to spin stuff up fast, prove out the value, and then immediately shift it for national or global scale through the business. So we're sort of proud of the culture of digital innovation that we've built inside BTG.
All right, that's good. So you mentioned a couple of the names of the people you've been working with, but obviously you've been looking at and thinking about and doing a lot more. And then now today you've just announced, or actually you're just announcing that there is news about a small company that was part of another relatively small company, part of Wonder Health, but this company is Oncoverse, and it's something that you're now engaging in a joint venture with Dignity. So tell us a little bit about what Oncoverse is, what it does, and what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. So we're very excited to follow on Net Scientific's announcement this morning of BTG's acquisition of the majority stake in a company called Oncoverse. Oncoverse is a software platform to support care coordination among oncologists. You can think of it as a virtual tumor board. So tumor board, cancer centers required to review a certain amount of complex cases every month to maintain accreditation. Everybody gathers in a room. You have some data available to you, some images. You have a conversation that's not really recorded anywhere and structured data about what you might do to patients, and then you leave. So what if you could take that experience and make it digital, and you could actually pull in data from the EHR and from the PAC system. You could have the individual physicians be able to reference guidelines or consult with other experts either in their organization or without, and then they would be able to send that around to however many of their oncologist buddies they'd wish to consult with, asynchronous and virtually. They're able to comment on the treatment plan, pull in whatever additional information they like referral to a clinical trial that they know is happening somewhere else, or try a new experimental therapy, and then it gets output as a final treatment plan. What BTG saw as enormous potential in this is, that by itself is a tremendously powerful tool, but what if we added a patient module onto it? And what if we brought relevant information about the patient's biopsychosocial circumstances onto the platform for the physicians to review on their own time in whatever way they find appropriate when they're making the treatment plan? We actually did a small pilot with that. Based on our pilot, which happened at Dignity Health, which happens to be the large integrated delivery network here in 7 states in the Western United States. They had supported Oncoverse from the beginning. They were the sort of original inventors, if you will, alongside Wanda. And we were so happy with the pilot that when Net Scientific announced their intention to sell Oncoverse, we raised our hand and said, we'd like to be considered as a potential acquirer. So many months went by, and here we are announcing our partnership. So the way it will be going forward is BTG, Dignity Health, the joint venture is Oncoverse. Wanda remains independent and separate. They're going to provide some support to Oncoverse in going forward on their own basis, but the two technology platforms were entirely severable. So we're really excited for additional deployments of Oncoverse within Dignity Health to go across multiple cancer centers, different types of patients, different types of settings. And then we want to expand beyond Dignity and think about what additional features might make sense. There's some interesting potential telehealth applications here. And then we are thinking about our friends in precision medicine and how we might leverage pulling in that virtual cohorting data to make it even more robust in the treatment planning process. So far, how many patients, doctors, what metrics you got in terms of centers has Oncoverse had go through its system, and what have been the results so far? So in our pilot, we were doing something very, very new. We were trying to figure out what patient data is relevant, how it should be presented, and we were just doing it in the most experimental, open-minded way possible and taking sort of the most well-educated guesses we could about what patients would think was important and how oncologists would like to review it. So we kept that very small and controlled so that we could limit the confounding factor. So we did that with one pilot site, the San Juan Mercy Cancer Center in Sacramento, and we put multiple physicians, small amount of patients through it. And our champion for that was Dr. Zeno DePerna, who is the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at the Sacramento Service Line and executive vice president at Dignity Health. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about reciting his credentials is because in that pilot, I was not able to see PHI, so I am hearing this from my physician champion, but because of the patient-generated data, we actually avoided a potentially unnecessary or unwarranted surgery for one patient, and because a surgeon himself was doing that pilot, we think that that's a very interesting finding. In other words, it's pretty cool when you're able to make a surgeon not operate.
They should operate on anybody who'll lie down usually, but maybe they're getting weak in their old age. Okay, fantastic. So talk a bit about, to finalize, you want to take this obviously beyond Dignity. What's the sort of next steps? Is Oncoverse now going to be hiring a team out here? What's the sort of next role?
So I think that the next steps are to stabilize the software base, make it robust. We have a big release coming out in June. We were able to carry over some really excellent expertise from the the full stack engineer who had been working on Oncoverse from the beginning. He's moved from Wanda to Oncoverse, so he's coming with us as a full-time member of the team. We want to hire enough support around him to make sense, so we're looking for a general manager if anybody would like to apply, although I will be entirely forthcoming in saying the initial priorities for that general manager will be software implementation throughout a large integrated delivery system. And we're looking to bring to bear the resources of both Dignity and BTG in whatever way we can to make the venture successful. It'll continue to be based in San Francisco for now. Obviously, Dignity is our partner and our first customer, but we're looking to grow in as opportunistically as possible.
Great. You can see it's early in the morning because now we have a BBC moment. My daughter's now arrived. So,
Hello.
Okay, say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Coco.
All right, so fantastic. Well, that's great news. And then the last question for you, of course, Amanda, is first of many? Question mark.
For BTG in general?
Well, for BTG, acquisitions in digital health.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, BTG's history has been to grow and to take an interest in incredibly promising and innovative medical device technologies. It's really just a short step from there to very promising and highly differentiated digital technologies. So this is the first step, I think, of a complete strategy that would integrate both. You know, if you look, and I know that you share this view, if you look across one of the many potential futures for healthcare delivery, it's really the marriage of technology-enabled services and the devices and products themselves. And so we're trying to look ahead to that future and figure out our role in it. And we're doing the early experiments now to understand from our partners what the value really is rather than impose what we think it is. And I think that's the right way to learn. So I'm incredibly excited to work at BTG because they sort of have the faith to do this and to partner with a center of clinical excellence to guide us in how we might do it the right way. But I do hope it's the first of many for sure.
Great. I've been talking with Amanda Goltz. She's the Vice President of Digital at BTG. Talking about her acquisition today, or their acquisition today of Oncoverse.
See, Coco approves. Our most important shareholder approves.
All right. Amanda, thanks so much for your time.
All right, thanks so much.